welcome back to another episode of the TFR podcast. We are back today to look ahead to the up-and-coming Barcelona GP and quickly reflect on the events and incidents from the 2026 Monaco Grand Prix and the drama that has actually followed that race. Even a week pretty much on from it, there is still plenty kind of getting decided, such as the final spot on the podium, but we'll get onto that soon. It is myself, CJH, on today's episode, and I'm joined by Ewan. Just the two of us today, so I do hope that meets everybody's standards. But how are you doing, Ewan? I hope you're all well.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Looking forward to this weekend. Of course, it's like the first time we've had a double header since the first two weekends of the
It
season.
feels strange.
So
Yeah.
it is. But yeah, it's nice to be back quite rapidly, and yeah, it should be a good one.
I'm all for it. I mean, it feels like this has been, a long time since we've had... I think, I want to say the very beginning of the season, we had a bit of a double header with maybe Japan and China, or it was Australia and China, something like that. But the point being, it has been a long time, and finally it feels like we're getting a little bit of momentum into this season. And well, let's talk about Monaco. It was, as expected, not the greatest race on the Sunday, although it was a bit more dramatic compared to some other Monaco GPs, but it was heavily dominated by penalties, more particularly, the focus being on the pit lane penalties and the speeding of them. But it was Kimi Antonelli who won for the fifth time in a row in 2026, and not since George Russell winning in Australia right at the very beginning of this championship has anybody been able to stop Antonelli. And yeah, once again, he made it in qualifying. He had a fantastic final lap to jump everybody just when it mattered. And it proved to be the real ticket to victory, Ewan, as we've seen many times with Monaco, because nobody was stopping Kimi on Sunday.
Yeah, this is probably the weekend that's impressed me the most, and I feel like I keep on saying that as the year goes on, it feels like he's just getting better and better, and it feels like nothing can stop him at the moment. He's just in an absolute purple patch at the moment, and yeah, this was a great weekend from Kimi and to win, and he just every single time we got a safety car restart or the start, he would just fly away without any not giving any hint of any problems or mistakes. So he did a great job. I am sure he's not bulletproof. So I feel like at some point in the season, I feel like there might be a bit of a blip. But for now, he's doing a great job and outclassing his teammate, who's really struggling at the moment, George Russell. So yeah, he's doing a great job. But let's see if it continues.
This is the thing. There has been a lot of talk about George Russell because he once again had a shocking result, and it seems as though his championship hopes have took a massive hit in the last couple of rounds. I mean, it's completely spun out of control, really, in terms of the gap to Antonelli, and this always seems to happen when Antonelli is winning races. And yes, Antonelli did win ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who was really on form at Monaco and kind of looked real back to his best. And we expected Ferrari to be arguably, though, a little bit better, and they really showed a lot of promise on the Friday practice sessions. Maybe didn't quite deliver on what they could have had, and in the end it was only Hamilton on the podium because Charles Leclerc quite dramatically crashed at the final turn as a safety car restart, identical to Lance Stroll, who crashed a few laps earlier, which actually brought out that very safety car. We'll get onto that a little bit later, but like I say, the results being Antonelli winning from Lewis Hamilton, and then a certain Pierre Gasly now on the podium. Now, if you are, been working today or whatever, and you're just listening to this now and thinking, hang on a minute, I watched that race on Sunday, and Isaac Hadger was on the podium. Well, it has all changed around, and what fill in the listeners? What on earth has happened there? Just now, for anyone looking at their phone, checking the results for the Monaco GP, Pierre Gasly is now on the podium.
Yeah, so Gasly's two penalties that he had at the end of the race, which he didn't serve, they have been pretty much rescinded. They've been put in the bin, and he finished where he finished on track. So he has lost those penalties because the FIA have seen that the pit lane limiter was wrong, and so it was wrong for him to get those penalties, which bikes up an argument of if he got that penalty removed, sure it's a bit unfair for every single one else who got like half the grid got penalties, which affected their race. Questions have got to be asked to the FIA, but it's good to see Gasly back on the podium. Of course, it's not going to feel like a real podium really because he's not actually taken in the real celebrations of it, but he'll be happy to pick up a Monaco podium, even if it is a week after.
Oh yeah, Pierre Gasly will be delighted with this because, yeah, I mean, what a great result for him and Alpine that they would have never really expected. And it was just one of those freak scenarios with the amount of retirements we had, and they were just there in the right position at the right time. But I have to say, for me, it's completely farcical. Absolutely farcical, because I just think, for crying out loud, they've obviously had an almighty screw up on that Sunday with the kind of speeding penalties. And I feel like this confirms that, because the fact they were able to appeal it and had it, overturned, that tells you that the penalties probably weren't accurate or kind of justified. And yes, in this Gasly situation, he has got the podium, but he's not been on the podium in Monaco, as in he's not gone up to the top and stood there and had the trophy in his hands and everything. And I just think, you know what, it's like you watch a football match and, we obviously have VAR and stuff like that these days, and, you see the result and everything. And then, 2 hours later, there's another decision and we have to go back and, take a penalty or something, to just decide the game. It's done. For me, Ewan, I feel like those penalties were applied, whether you agree with them or not, and that's it. You have to move on. Everyone else has to suck it up. Look at George Russell. George Russell has just completely, potentially had his championship blown apart because of these penalties. And you can apply it to many other drivers who, didn't kind of appeal their penalties that they got. I just think this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm delighted for Gasly, and I'm pleased for Alpine. They've deserved it in some sense. But I just think, you know what? If that's the decision in the moment, you can't be doing this. You can't be almost re-reffing it a week almost later. I mean, I can't believe this. This is Friday. They're all in bloody Barcelona. And then now we find out there's a different podium. I mean, do you agree with me, or do you think differently?
Yeah, no, I mostly agree with what you're saying. I think the whole weekend was just, or the race was just a bit,
It ruined
um,
it, I
yeah,
think.
it was just a bit. I don't know, the quality wasn't great with all those penalties coming up, and yeah, like you said, it is just a bit unfair. And like Russell's championship is really like he got 0 points from that weekend because he only got a drive through because he didn't serve his 5 second penalty, which was gotten from the pit lane. So yeah, it's an interesting decision, but yeah, it's been made, and Gasly gets the podium. But uh, let's hope that doesn't happen again. Surely at a more normal track like Spain, it's not going to be as big of an issue because Monaco, bit of an anomaly street circuit. The limiter might be a bit off there, so yeah, let's see. But yeah, it's a discussion to be had.
Yeah, I just think it was just messy. It was very messy.
Yeah.
And okay, fine, you get a few people that get a penalty, but then there was a point where there's like 6 people that had penalties for, mainly speeding. And I just think it just gets all a bit silly, really, of you're deciding races, like that. I mean, we have this little bit with the TFR eSports League on the F1 game, where I actually think races that are decided by time penalties, which is a kind of main thing that you get for those who don't play the F1 games, that's really something that you see quite a lot, where drivers can pick up a time penalty. And I think like if you watch a race in that where like there's a bunch of people that all get time penalties, and then a race gets decided by who's got 3 seconds or 6 seconds, I just don't think that's good for the show as well. And I just think like yes, there's rules, but I just think, I don't know. I mean, do you feel bad for Isaac Hadjar? I mean, he did actually say in a post race interview that you know, he doesn't really care. I mean, at the end of the day, he stood on the podium at Monaco, and in his mind, he got that podium. And to be fair, he had actually a great race. Like he had a lot of problems with that car. So how do you see it from his perspective?
Yeah, I think he won't be too bothered really. He only ended up fourth in the end, so it's only like a 3 points difference. It's not groundbreaking, and yeah, he's still got to experience the Monaco podium. So yeah, I think he won't be too bothered, and he'll be fully focused on this weekend. But yeah, I heard that even McLaren and Red Bull have appealed the
Wow.
decision that Gasly have rescinded, and they've like put up 6 different reasons why that penalty shouldn't have been appealed. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. And just imagine if it gets
Oh,
rescinded, where Gasly goes back off the podium and Hadjar gets back on.
honestly, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I could genuinely see that. I could genuinely see there's a chance there, especially when two teams are doing that there could be another twist in the tail here, and yeah, Gasly doesn't actually end up in the podium. I mean, I'm so torn because at the end of the day, if that was anyone else, like if that was one of the Ferraris, Red Bulls, Mercedes, I probably wouldn't even care really because it's like they can get another podium. But because it's Gasly, I would quite like him, and now he's got it. Then maybe don't want this to get, but it's just for crying out loud. I mean, I've actually seen. We won't go too much further into this, but I've seen people comparing this to like 2021 of like, could you imagine like that Abu Dhabi race that like if we got to this kind of territory that there was appeals and everything and it was like basically the championship getting decided in that sense. I just think this is a tin of worms that have been opened here that I think they've got to be very careful with this because that can really start to bring on more things. Because it's not often we see this. I mean, this is pretty rare that we see this kind of circumstance where, days after the race, actually we got, position changes. Um, and I don't know. I just think like this could bring on even more kind of significant decisions that people can appeal and get changed. I mean, imagine the scenario here where this was for the win and someone's gained a victory by appealing. And I don't know, what do you think? Do you think there's a chance to that in the future if this kind of becomes stays how it is, if you like?
It could be. It does set a dangerous precedent, but I feel like that weekend was a bit of an anomaly. You're not going to
Mm.
see that very often. Look, we have seen penalties being awarded post race. Just think of Japan 2023 when
Yeah.
Leclerc got that penalty post race. So it's not unheard of. But yeah, it's not the way you want to like gain results. I feel like when it's post race, I feel like in during the race it's fair game if you get a penalty, that game's the game. But post race penalties, yeah, it doesn't feel right because it doesn't feel like that was the real result, and like you don't get the feeling of if you gained a position, you don't really feel that feeling because you're like out of the car for the last 24 hours. So yeah, it's a interesting decision. Whether it will open it to the worms, I think maybe at some points, but I think very rarely, and I feel like we
Mm.
won't see anything like Monaco for quite a long time now.
Well, hopefully not, because I actually felt it kind of spoiled it a little bit because it turned the race in a bit of a gimmicky way. But in terms of the rest of the results, we obviously then have now Isaac Hadger in fourth, who had a great drive, like I said, with his engine issues. Um, Oscar Piastri picked up a P5 finish, a very anonymous race from him. I mean, you wouldn't even be able to tell that he was in the race. I mean, I swear he just stayed in that position right the way through. And McLaren not really having that much pace around Monaco seemed like a bit of a bad track for them in terms of the way their car is set up, but a great result for VCarb. Liam Lawson and Arvid Lindblad both deep inside the points, 6th and 7th for both cars. Lindblad not even pitting throughout the entire race and actually changing his tyres under the red flag that was brought out for the state of the track at the final turn because of it kind of ripping up. And yeah, Arvid Lindblad really showing that actually the trick to getting a good result at Monaco is just not pitting at all and just kind of hoping for some freak scenario like that. We had Alex Albon and Esteban Ocon in 8th and ninth respectively, and Fernando Alonso picked up the first point for Aston Martin this year. Again, quite a fortuitous point that he's picked up, but they will absolutely take it. What about VCarb there, Ewan? I mean, what a great result for them. I mean, they probably never expected both drivers to be getting that amount of points after qualifying. And yeah, that has given them a right old boost in the Constructors' Championship. They're now up to 6th. Still quite a bit behind Alpine after Gasly's result, but well ahead now of Haas and Williams. Talk to me. How pleased were you for them, and how great of a job did they do?
Yeah, it was a great job from VCarb, and it's one of those races where you have opportunities to pick up big points due to opponents faltering around you. It was just one of those races, and yeah, they picked up a great result. There's they didn't show great pace, but they were there when they needed to be, and they pick up great points. So yeah, it's a really good result from VCarb, and it could be crucial points in the constructors. So yeah, that can't be understated. It was looking like Audi at the start of the weekend that were going to be picking up those big points, but yeah, it ended up being VCarb, and yeah, it just shows the unpredictability of these new regulations. So really interesting, VCarb, a good job. Let's see if they can keep that up going into the European leg.
Yeah, it's quite a spicy little midfield battle going on there. I think Alpine, everyone's kind of accepting now, is a little bit ahead of a bunch of the others. But I would say it was probably Haas at the beginning of the season. It seemed actually pretty good with Ollie Behrman. But I think like Haas, Williams, take your pick of the rest. I think they're all kind of fairly close now with VCarb in there as well. So we're starting to get our proper midfield fight again where every point matters. And yeah, there was quite a few points up for grabs in the end because really a lot of that was caused because we had a bunch of the top guns all kind of retire or barely even make it to the end of the first lap, which was a certain Max Verstappen who had a great qualifying, I thought, and really was in the mix for pole, but had just a catastrophic start, didn't he? I mean, he had a bit of a bad launch on the way to the grid, they were saying, in the commentary. And yeah, it proved to be there was a problem there because he completely stalled off the line. Very lucky, I thought, Ewan. And thankfully, shall I say, there wasn't an enormous crash because I feel like I've seen that before in races like F2 and stuff like that, where a car stalls like that and he just gets smashed into by some other car flying past. But do you think that kind of changed the way the race ended up because we lost Verstappen at the start?
Yeah, I think Red Bull and Verstappen had a decent package going into that weekend. They looked pretty decent, but yeah, he did really good to avoid all the other cars. He knew as soon as he got off the line, he turned left to get out of the way of everyone else. So yeah, unfortunate for Verstappen, and it seemed like he had really good pace. It seemed like he could go toe to toe with Antonelli at least for pole. I feel like it would have maybe been a different story in the race. Maybe Antonelli would have been pushed a bit harder, but that's just hypothetical situations. We will never know if Verstappen would have challenged Antonelli. I believe that Antonelli still would have had it in the bag by about 2 or 3 tenths, but definitely not as big of a margin as it was from Mercedes back to the Ferraris. So yeah, unfortunate for Verstappen, and that's more points down the drain. And yeah, it could have been an interesting battle, maybe in the first few laps, maybe at the red flag restart, if Verstappen was around. But yeah, he'll be unhappy with that. But realistically, he's already given into the fact that he's not challenging for a championship. I feel like he's just going race by race and just trying to get the best and just trying to win and not think about anything else.
Yeah, I think that's the point. Is it's they know that they're not in a championship fight this season. I mean, that'd be even more of a turnaround than last year if suddenly they did become competitive in that. Although the FIA do think that Red Bull have the best engine. We'll get onto that a bit more later. But going off what the FIA say, they've obviously got a bit more in the tank than what we've seen so far. But yeah, a pretty horrific result for Verstappen, and you're right, I think it actually took a bit out of the race, which was a bit of a shame. It was a bit of a horrific result for Lando Norris as well. It wasn't kind of going too well anyway, and he was suffering from his own issues throughout until the engine fully conked out for, I want to say, the second time of the weekend, because obviously we had the stuff on Friday. And how worried are you now for Lando with his kind of parts and components with that car? Because it's been a bit of a rough start to the season for McLaren in terms of reliability, and Norris is really getting hit hard with a lot of the kind of bad failures and things like that. I mean, we're only 6 rounds in. Do you think there's going to be penalties on the way fairly soon?
100%. I think there's going to be penalties soon. I think he's on his last battery. So yeah, it's not looking too good. And yeah, it's just terrible, terrible reliability throughout the season so far since EP1 in Australia. It's just been terrible luck, terrible reliability. But look, I've still seen enough from him to be happy with his performances this season. I feel like he's done a decent enough job. Of course, in Monaco qualifying, he did make a mistake, but I'd rather him make that mistake and like properly push for it and go for it than him not make a mistake but just finishing wherever. I'm happy to see him push like that. And even then in qualifying he was ahead of Piastri, even with the limited running in FP2. Like he had an engine failure like 10 minutes into the session, and Monaco was crucial to get practice. So I'm happy with his pace at the moment. I think his pace is great. And I think it's better than what it looks like on paper with the qualifying head to head. But yeah, it's just unfortunate with the reliability because the car keeps falling apart. It's just very frustrating. But yeah, we'll see if that improves over the season. But yeah, it just seems like it's always Norris's car and not Piastri's. But yeah, it's just hard luck. It's just that's racing. That's a new regulation cycle. So it is what it is. At least he's got his championship, and he seems mega relaxed in media pen and in interviews. So that's good to see. But yeah, let's see if his reliability worries continue.
It's funny you say that. I was just thinking that I do think we're seeing a very different Lando this season, where he seems like he's had a ton of weight taken off the shoulders by winning that championship last season, which is a very obvious thing to say because that happens to pretty much most drivers. That once they get that championship, they do just seem to be a bit more relaxed. And I actually thought Lando last season, despite going for the championship, it felt like the entire season it was like a really serious Lando, because like when you see some of the old clips of his earlier years at McLaren, he was all kind of fun and absolutely buzzing all the time. And if he even got a pole position, he was like screaming his head off. When like last season, it felt very everything was quite tight and just a bit kind of clenched up because he knew he's got the championship in his hands, in a sense. So it was like even if he won a race, he couldn't really celebrate it in a way. And I think that is quite nice to see that Lando this season, well, to at least my eyes, I think he's just so much more like comfortable in the sport again because, like he's got that championship, and so things don't really. It's obviously they still matter, but it's not the end of the world as much, because he's got that. I mean, I this is slightly different, but do you think like a driver like Lando? I know like he is very motivated and wants to win more championships in F1 and more races. But do you think like Lando's one of these drivers that may not say necessarily continue on forever into for like his late 30s and 40s whatever for F1 because of by getting that championship? He strikes me, Ewan, as a driver that now he's got that, like he's almost pretty happy with that in a sense. Or do you see that differently in that he's going to go for more?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, look, I think he's happy with the championship, but uh, I feel like his mentality is anything more is just a bonus.
Mm.
I think he's he's achieved what he wanted to achieve in the sport, but he's still there for a reason. He still wants to win, and he still wants to go for championships, and he's still performed well this season. I feel like if the McLaren car ramps up, we could see him maybe just go for second because Antonelli is a bit too far clear now. But yeah, it's a weird one because of course you want him to be ambitious and just want to win like Verstappen, but you're not going to get Verstappen in every single driver. He's a unique driver, and he does things his way. That's not necessarily bad, but it's maybe frustrating that he doesn't want to just win everything more. But it's an interesting one. I think he said recently that he's not going to be in the sport until he's 40, like
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton. I'm pretty sure he referenced. So yeah, I expect him to not maybe retire and like I don't think he's retiring anytime soon,
No,
but
yeah.
I think yeah, definitely not for like 10 plus years, I don't think.
It's an interesting one that I feel like we'll have that conversation again at some point, in probably not the too far off future really, because I think it's an interesting topic of different drivers' mentalities. Because a Max Verstappen, despite not necessarily wanting to win 7 championships or whatever, he is that kind of mentality though of a driver that will dominate and is ruthless in that way of domination. I don't see that same thing in Lando, and I feel like when he had that championship to chase, that was his motivation, and that's what he, was rocking up to every race for. And I feel like maybe that could get revived if you like once he gets back into a championship, maybe after later in the season or whatever. But it's an interesting one to keep an eye on because at the minute they're in that kind of gap where McLaren just kind of probably need to just get some good results together. And they're not really in any title fight at the moment, but there are still plenty of races to go. So we'll see how that plays out. But yes, in terms of lineup, not a great weekend in Monaco. It also wasn't a great weekend for Charles Leclerc, the home favourite. It was looking so good on Friday, and then the beginning of qualifying had plenty of pace, but just a few errors in Q3 meant it all slipped away. And in the race, it was looking not too bad. He was kind of recovering towards the podium and was going to get second with the penalty for Hamilton. And then he went and binned it in the wall. And yes, that was curtains for his race. Do you kind of get his frustrations with the brakes, or would you actually say that was more to do with the track basically ripping up? I mean, again, that was a big issue with Monaco that I actually thought was slightly embarrassing, to be honest, because that was on the new tarmac that basically it was like a pothole that we get in the UK, that was on the final turn, and Charles Leclerc just went plowing into the barrier. I mean, he ripped into the brake supplier, and he was not happy with him all weekend. But does he have a point?
I think he does have a point, but I feel like he needs to take a little bit of blame for that incident. It was just a very messy weekend. I felt for Charles Leclerc. Not one of his best Monaco Grand Prix, of course. Yeah, I feel like that crash at the last corner, it's just a combination, I think, of the brakes and of the tarmac, and of the cold tires. I think it's just a combination of the three because it was on a safety car restart. So yeah, just an unfortunate weekend for Leclerc. Yeah, with that tarmac, it was not ideal, and with those Brembo brakes that he's actually changed for this weekend, he's gone to the brakes that Lewis Hamilton uses.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting to see how that compares. Apparently, Leclerc's Brembo brakes were able to heat up the tires quicker. Um, I heard that from somewhere, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the whole like Brembo brake scenario is a weird one. But yeah, we'll see how that pans out. And it'd be interesting to see why Leclerc and Hamilton went for different brake companies or manufacturers, because I feel like that's quite interesting, and it's quite interesting why that's only just been raised now.
Yeah, I know because they are the brake supplier for Ferrari. I mean, Hamilton, I think, has always had, or he's chose to have a different brake supplier, and that's the kind of anomaly there. And I think this is the point: is that Charles had some frustrations about it already, and then I think the fact that he ended up in the wall, in his opinion, because of the brakes, then that was it, the final straw. And yeah, they were not happy though. The company, they spoke out and said that it was pretty premature of Charles to be that kind of vocal. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, like you say, Ewan, because if Charles is suddenly ahead of Hamilton this weekend, then who knows? There could be more to it than meets the eye. But speaking of this weekend, we might as well move on to it because I think that's pretty much a lot covered for Monaco. Again, another slightly iffy weekend, but a fantastic result for Kimi Antonelli, and he goes into this weekend looking to make it 6 in a row, which would put him right towards the top end of the record books. But yes, it is the Barcelona GP, not the Spanish GP anymore. Or I actually slightly prefer the Catalunya GP. I think that sounds a bit better. I mean, Barcelona, I just can't imagine that as Barcelona. Like, I just think Barcelona is like the city, the new Camp
Yeah.
Stadium, and all that. I mean, like the circuit's nowhere near it. Well, not to my eyes, but anyways, that's what they're going with, as we obviously have Madrid GP coming in later in the year, which there are rumours that it's still not quite ready yet. So we will kind of see where we go with that one. But this is obviously, we're not going to have it next year, actually, this race, because it's in rotation with Spa, I believe. So I think Spa is on the calendar next year, and then it'll be back to Barcelona. Are you kind of disappointed that this track's going, or would you not mind it kind of going into that rotational thing? I mean, of all the tracks being Spa, that's a bit disappointing. But I mean, how do you rate this circuit, the Barcelona Catalunya, or whatever it's called?
Yeah, I think it's honestly a decent track. I think it's a proper aerodynamic track. It's like a wind tunnel track. It's been described as before, with how much like high speed, medium speed, low speed it is. It's everything. It's a pure testing racing track, and I honestly think it's okay. It's a bit there's a lot of dirty air around here because of the high speed, medium speed, and so it is hard to follow, hard to really race. But when you do see racing at the likes of turn one to turn three, it does seem to be quite good because you can really overtaking is great when there's more than when you can carry on a battle throughout more than one corner, and I feel like you can do that around Spain. So I think it's a decent track. I think it's just very solid, not bad, not great. And whether I think it should have been in the rotation, I just don't think these European races should be in the rotation. I think it should be the tracks that the fans don't like Vegas or like Miami. These tracks that people just obviously don't like. I feel like the fans, and I feel like I think that those tracks should be in rotation and not these fabled European tracks that have been on the calendar for ever so long. I think, yeah, it's a bit disrespectful to that legacy. And I think, yeah, the newer tracks should be in rotation, or tracks that come into the calendar should be the tracks to be first on rotation.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's a bit of a funny. I don't mind it being on rotation, but I just think again with the Belgium GP, I don't know. I think that's a bit of a a bit of a big contrast between the two. I don't know. I'd need to have a proper think about it in terms of what track. I'd maybe say Hungary. Maybe I'd happily see a rotation between Barcelona and Hungary each year of having one or the other. But anyways, that is what we've got. But I do think this is very good for seeing where the cars are at. It might not be the most exciting races, but it does show us exactly what the pecking order is, because the track has got a perfect balance of everything, and it's got medium, low speed, high speed corners. It's got a long straight as well. This is why they've used it for preseason testing for many, many, many seasons, and hopefully it remains the circuit for that for many years to come. But we did have practice today, and it was George Russell who started off FP1 fastest, but then Lando Norris bounced back by topping the timetables, being 9 thousandths of a second clear of Russell in that second session, with Piastri right up there as well, only 57 thousandths of a second off as well. Charles Leclerc was fourth, about 3 tenths back, with Kimi Antonelli surprisingly just under 6 tenths off the pace. He obviously missed the first practice session because Mercedes were having a junior driver in the car. But I think that was quite a big story of the day, that Antonelli was quite a bit off the pace. So is this too early to jump ahead? Am I getting ahead of myself here? Or is this maybe a sign to come? A lot of people have said this thing that with Antonelli, they are waiting to see what he's like in this European season. Part of the season, shall I say? Because last season, this is where it started to slip away for him, and he really went on a bad run. Now, he obviously squashed a bit of that in Monaco by winning that race in dominant fashion. But is this the kind of key points here where he's got a big lead in the championship? He just needs to just keep on that podium. He doesn't necessarily need to win every race, but he just needs to keep the consistency going.
Yeah, exactly. I think for this weekend, I think it's a bit too early to tell. I think Antonelli still has some pace in the bag. I think, and the fact he missed FP1, that is not ideal, and it seemed like most drivers except Lando, with missing that FP1, it made them quite a far away off their teammates. But I feel like by FP3, by qualifying, they're all gonna shape back up and get into a position where they're back on it and they're in the zone and they're locked in. So yeah, let's see. I don't think that I don't believe that will be the gap going into qualifying or going into FP3 or going out of FP3, but we'll see. But it does look like Russell has got some good pace around here. So it could be interesting if Antonelli refines that. It could be Antonelli and Russell once again fighting at the front, which we saw in Canada was pretty good.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a bit of that. I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to be thinking about Spain 2016, because if they are on the front row come Sunday, oh boy, could we get a repeat of that? And that would be the most hilarious thing, I think, all season. And I don't think anything will match that if we do get another Spain 2016, which would be terrible for George Russell, because he needs to win this weekend. It's getting to that point now where only 6 races into the season, but he's going to be too far back. But we'll see. At the minute, I would say like his pace was better at Monaco, but this is into that territory now where if Antonelli wins for 6th race in a row, I don't honestly go as far as to say I don't think George can win this championship this season. Even if Antonelli had, bad reliability to kind of balance that out later in the season. Um, yeah, I don't think for George he's going to be able to win this championship. What do you think, Ewan? Not to put you on the spot with that, but do you think Russell is still in the championship fight? Is it too early to count him out, or would you do that now?
I still think it's too early, but I don't think it's that far off. If he gets another no points finish, I think he should just pack up and don't attend the rest of the season. But yeah, I feel like he's just struggling. He's in a bad patch. But it's just whether this Antonelli form just carries on and if he can keep that consistency going. Because if he can keep this consistency with his great car, if he just keeps on the podium, he should be fine. And that seems like pretty effortless for him at the moment. He seems to be doing things just not with much effort. He seems to just be smooth and sliding his way through the weekends. And it seems like he doesn't really have much pressure on him. It feels like the pressure's more on Russell. So Russell is not only getting beaten by his younger teammate, he's getting the social media pressure from everyone around him in the interviews. So that will surely be taking a toll on him, a bit like Norris last season at the start of the season. But it's even worse for Russell with penalties, engine issues, DNFs. It's just been a nightmare of a start to the season for Russell. And yeah, he needs to find something in this European season. This European season is pretty crucial for Russell's hopes. And if he doesn't come out of this European season gaining like at least 30 points, I think at that point you'd call it off.
Interesting. I mean, I saw a pretty damning stat uh, from Daniel Valente on X, where George Russell last season in 2025 scored 93 points with 4 podiums. This year in 2026, he has 88 points with only 2 podiums. And that Mercedes is by far and by a mile the best car on the grid compared to last year, where the Mercedes was at some point second, third best car, and definitely nowhere near that McLaren. It has been not a good run for him at all, and yes, he has to. I mean, it can very quickly turn around because, as we've seen, there's a stat that's done the rounds. I also saw that Kimi Antonelli, of all the cars that have a Mercedes engine in the back, he's the only driver that's had no reliability issues all season. That is going to change at some point. It's going to have to change at some point because there's no way all the other cars have had a ton. I mean, we were talking about Lando Norris earlier. The amount of issues he's had, there's no way Antonelli is going to keep going. Or if he does, then I don't want to kind of stir the pot here, but I start to get a little bit, thinking there's something going on there that I'm not going to throw any wild accusations out just yet in the podcast. But I mean, like if Antonelli goes the season with no friggin' reliability issues, I'll be seriously questioning what's going on over at Mercedes and Toto Wolff. But anyways, we'll see. It could change quite quickly. If he had a DNF this weekend, George won the race. Could all be looking very different. Are you encouraged with McLaren's pace today? Very quickly, do you think that McLaren could be in the mix for the win?
I don't think so. I think Mercedes we've seen it this season so far that they ramp it up on the Saturday and they find a few more attempts. We've seen that throughout. So yeah, I think maybe they're going to be better than a Ferrari, but whether they would challenge Mercedes, uh, I don't think so. I think Mercedes just have a good enough chassis, like we saw in Monaco, that is chassis dependent and it delivered there. And we already know their engine is extremely well performed, and it's their own engine, so they know it inside out. Compared to McLaren, who are still kind of learning on the go. So yeah, I think Mercedes will have the upper hand this weekend. Whether it'll be a bit like a Canada scenario where Russell and Antonelli trip over each other and maybe Norris or Piastri could pick up the pieces, we'll have to wait and see with that. And the gap looks close at the moment, but let's just wait and see, and see if McLaren have a bit more to show.
Well, I think it's time then to predict this weekend's Barcelona GP of 2026. So this is going to be a bit of a tricky one then to pick who. Well, I say it could be a tricky one. It might not be, considering what you've said there. I think it's all depending on what happens because, I mean, for crying out loud, we were never going to predict Monaco correctly because we had friggin' Pierre Gasly on the podium, which we found out like almost a week bloody later. But for this weekend, we're kind of thinking it's going to go back a bit to normality, unfortunately. But who is going to be your pick for pole position for the 2026 Barcelona GP?
My pole position will be George Russell.
I like it. That would be a bit of a comeback for George when needed. Interesting. I'm actually going to go with Lando Norris. I think Lando Norris will take pole position this weekend. I think he's got a pretty good track record at Barcelona, and has had pole before. And yeah, I think he will take pole. What about your podium for Sunday? How is that shaping up from third to first?
I think I will go Piastri, Russell, Antonelli.
Okay, interesting. No Norris on the podium. I don't mean to kind of keep bringing up that you're a Norris fan, but like, where is he?
I think he would just have another issue, to be honest. I feel
No.
like I think he
I hope this is reverse jinx.
yeah, I think he's just being his car is just having issues left, right, and center. He had brake issues in FP2 today. So yeah, I have no trust in that McLaren car, and I think it's going to fail on him again. So I've got no real expectations, but yeah, I think Piastri will have a pretty decent weekend. I think he'll be pretty close to Norris, but we'll have to wait and see. Norris looked pretty on it in FP2, even without the P1 session. So I think Norris will be quicker this weekend, but I think due to circumstances in the race, I think Piastri will have it. And with Russell and Antonelli, I think Antonelli, yeah, I think he'll just pit Russell. I think Russell will make a few mistakes, maybe like Spain, and I think Antonelli will take a sixth win in a row.
Wow. Very good points made. I am thinking. I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm really stuck on this one. I think Russell in third, which I've done that again. I have done it again where I've said George Russell in third for some reason when he probably is going to do better than that this weekend. I think Lando Norris will get second. I do think the McLaren could be competitive. This makes for a change, by the way. I'm like the optimistic one about Lando here. Like, what's
I'm
going
liking
on?
the Lando Norris.
I
I'm
know
liking
what's
the
going
Lando
on.
Norris.
Like, I don't know why I'm thinking this weekend. And yeah, I think he'll get second. Could get the win. I was very tempted to give him the victory as well, just for good measure. But I think he'll be second with Kimi Antonelli winning the race. I genuinely think, though, that could be very different. But I'm going to say Antonelli's going to win the race. For the first time this season, I think I've said Antonelli's going to win a race. So maybe that might mean he might not win a race.
Reverse jinx.
But I haven't really said him to win much this season, so I'll give him this one. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. It's a very long run into the first corner. And we've seen what race starts can be like this season. So that will be unmissable this weekend because Spain, even in normal seasons, has had a mental run into that first turn. And with the way the cars are now, don't rule out Ferrari taking the lead into turn one as well, with the way that's shaping up. So, yeah, plenty to look forward to. It looks like it's going to be a full dry weekend as well of running. So plenty of action. And we very much look forward to it. Thank you, Ewan, for joining me on today's episode. Pleasure as always. And we'll be back next week to review the 2026 Barcelona GP. And then it'll be a bit of a couple weeks break until the next round, which I want to say is Austria off the top of my head. I think it's Austria. It is Austria, which is obviously always a great race. But we'll look ahead to that when that comes around. If you've enjoyed this episode of the TFR Pod, you can follow us on Spotify or your other audio platforms of choice. And if you're watching on YouTube, we have suddenly had a bit of a major increase of subscribers. So if you are a new subscriber, due to a pretty trendy Max Verstappen video that's almost reached 1 million views now, which is quite the shock. But if you are a new subscriber watching this episode, please do continue to stay subscribed and look forward to some more podcasts in the future. We'll be back next week and we'll see. Will Antonelli make it 6th of the best in 2026? We'll see you then.